In a dramatic turn of events, a new discovery by the FBI concerning Luis Tagle, the esteemed Filipino cardinal, has sent shockwaves through both the Catholic Church and global intelligence communities. Known for his influential role within the Vatican and his close ties to the Holy See, Tagle has long been regarded as one of the Church's most powerful and respected leaders. But a recent development has left many questioning his involvement in matters that could alter the course of Church history. Tagle's reputation, built on years of service to both the Filipino people and the broader Catholic community, had always been beyond reproach. As the Archbishop of Manila and a prominent figure in the Vatican, his ascent to the College of Cardinals seemed a natural step. However, recent revelations suggest that there may be more to his career and affiliations than the public has ever been privy to. The FBI's findings have brought attention to what many would consider an explosive matter involving Luis Tagle and his interactions with individuals and organizations that have been under investigation for years. The discovery has not only placed Tagle at the center of a controversy, but also cast a dark shadow over the Vatican's dealings, raising questions about the Church's transparency and accountability. Luis Antonio Tagle was born in Manila, Philippines in 1957, and from a young age, he demonstrated a deep commitment to his faith. He entered the seminary, quickly gaining recognition for his intelligence, humility, and dedication to the Church. By 2011, Tagle became the Archbishop of Manila, succeeding Cardinal Gaudencio Rosales, and soon became one of the most prominent Catholic figures in Asia. His appointment to the College of Cardinals in 2012 was seen as a major achievement not only for the Philippines, but for the global Catholic community. Tagle's leadership was marked by a deep commitment to social justice, poverty alleviation, and interfaith dialogue. He was often hailed as a progressive voice within the Vatican, advocating for a more compassionate and inclusive church. Tagle's reputation was largely built on his work in these areas, and for many, his future within the Vatican seemed bright. As the Archbishop of Manila, Tagle's influence extended far beyond the Philippines. He became a prominent figure at the Vatican, often participating in important events and discussions. His speeches and homilies gained widespread attention as he called for greater attention to the poor and marginalized. His presence at the Vatican, alongside Pope Francis, only cemented his status as one of the most respected voices within the global Catholic Church. However, behind this public image of humility and service, the recent FBI findings suggest that Tagle's influence may have been leveraged in ways that go against the very values he publicly espoused. The discovery came to light following a prolonged investigation into several high-profile individuals within international religious and political circles. The FBI had been tracking individuals with suspected ties to illicit financial activities, as well as those involved in the manipulation of church resources. What they uncovered about Luis Tagle, however, was far more disturbing than they initially anticipated. It was revealed that Tagle had been in contact with several individuals whose financial dealings and affiliations had raised significant red flags for the FBI. These individuals, some of whom were linked to criminal organizations and questionable financial practices, had been interacting with Tagle for years, often under the guise of charitable work and religious outreach. The nature of these interactions, though not overtly criminal, suggested that Tagle had unknowingly, or perhaps willfully, allowed himself to be involved in financial networks with questionable motives. In addition, documents discovered during the investigation pointed to large sums of money being funneled through organizations in the Philippines, some of which were tied to Tagle's philanthropic initiatives. Though no direct evidence has surfaced linking him to any illicit activities, the discovery raised serious concerns about the integrity of these funds and their intended use. The FBI, though careful not to make any premature conclusions, was quick to issue a statement highlighting the potential risks of such associations. As news of the FBI's findings broke, the Vatican was thrown into turmoil. Tagle, who had long been regarded as a close confidant of Pope Francis, found himself at the center of intense scrutiny. For the Church, this was an unprecedented situation. The Vatican has long prided itself on its transparency and ethical standards, but this latest revelation cast doubt on those claims. Within hours of the FBI's disclosure, the Vatican issued a statement stressing the importance of due process and cooperation with international authorities. However, behind the scenes, church officials were scrambling to assess the damage. Tagle, who had often been the public face of the church's social initiatives, now found himself facing difficult questions about his involvement in these financial networks. Was he complicit, or had he been misled by individuals he trusted? The implications were far-reaching. If Tagle's connections were found to be more than just coincidental, it could result in a massive scandal for the Vatican, one that could shake the very foundation of the Church's credibility. The discovery raised uncomfortable questions about the Church's financial management and its historical dealings with controversial figures, both within and outside of the Catholic world. Pope Francis, whose leadership style has been defined by openness and a commitment to reform, had to navigate the delicate situation. While publicly supporting Tagle, the Pope was reportedly disturbed by the findings. His calls for transparency and accountability within the Church now seemed all the more urgent, and the Vatican's internal mechanisms were put under intense scrutiny as the investigation continued. As the investigation into Tagle's involvement progressed, the public's reaction was swift and polarized. Supporters of Tagle, many of whom admired his charitable work and his role in bringing attention to poverty and inequality, quickly rallied behind him. They argued that the FBI's discovery was a misunderstanding, claiming that Tagle had always acted in good faith, and that his relationships with these individuals were purely professional. These supporters called for patience and due process, urging the public to refrain from jumping to conclusions before all the facts were presented. On the other hand, critics of Tagle, particularly those from within the Church who had long suspected the existence of financial mismanagement, seized the opportunity to cast doubt on his character. They questioned how such high-profile connections could go unnoticed for so long, and whether Tagle had been too naive to recognize the potential dangers of these associations. Church reform advocates, in particular, voiced concerns that this scandal could represent a much deeper problem within the Vatican, one that had been ignored for far too long. The media frenzy that followed only added fuel to the fire. Headlines around the world focused on Tagle's name, and every new development in the investigation was closely watched. News outlets ran speculative reports, some suggesting that the investigation could lead to a much larger probe into the Vatican's financial dealings and the Church's influence in global politics. As the investigation into Luis Tagle's connections continues, the Vatican faces an uncertain future. Tagle's fate remains in limbo as authorities work to determine the extent of his involvement, if any, in these financial networks. For the Church, this represents a crucial moment in its ongoing struggle with transparency and accountability. For Tagle, the road ahead is equally uncertain. While he maintains his innocence and insists that he was simply trying to help those in need, the questions surrounding his judgment and his associations with certain individuals may linger for years to come. Regardless of the outcome, this discovery has changed everything, not just for Tagle, but for the Vatican as a whole. What was once seen as a story of spiritual leadership and charitable work has now become a tale of intrigue and investigation. The Vatican's reputation, long protected by its sacred role in global religion, has been tested like never before. The discovery by the FBI has opened a Pandora's box, one that may take years to fully understand and resolve. In the end, only time will tell whether Luis Tagle will emerge from this scandal unscathed, or whether the revelations will fundamentally alter the trajectory of his career and the Church's future. What is certain, however, is that this is a moment of reckoning for the Vatican, a moment that may very well shape the course of its history for generations to come.